What's going on, guys? My name is Brett Maurer, and this is We the People podcast. Today, we are talking urban legends. With it being so close to Halloween, I figured why not a few ghost stories to get us ready for some trick or treating. So, we are talking American urban legends today, and we have a ton of them, okay? Whether we're talking hauntings or cryptids, you know, you have the Jersey Devil, you have the ghost of Giles Corey, um, and then you have some instances like the ones we're going to talk about today, which are mainly hauntings. And actually, one is a story of a man who became an urban legend. So, the first instance I want to talk about is a story from Alabama. It's referred to as the Dead Children's Playground. This is a playground that sits adjacent to a Maple Hill Cemetery. Maple Hill Cemetery is one of Huntsville, Alabama's oldest cemeteries. The playground was presumably designed to be a place where kids could go and spend their time while their parents were visiting graves in the cemetery, or even for it to be used as a public space for children to go and simply play. Now, the legend has it that many children who died in Huntsville, Alabama during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic are buried in the cemetery that sits adjacent to the playground. And it is said that the spirits of those children come out after dark to run around, play, and use the equipment on this playground. You can Google search it, and many people have posted their pictures or their stories claiming to have seen unexplained shadows, orbs of light. There's sometimes pictures that they claim show these unexpected shadows and orbs. Eyewitnesses have said they observed orbs of light going down the slides, seen the swings moving, and have even heard children giggling. Some also say that some of the spirits there could include a group of children who were involved in some child murders in the 1960s. This kind of came after when obviously there was a string of child murders in the 1960s, and the bodies were rumored to have been found in the area where the playground sits. So they think, or some people believe, that there is a group of children from that. The actual playground wasn't opened until 1985. So they say that with putting the playground up, they drew the spirits in and gave them a place to go and experience the afterlife like they would have their living lives. In 2007, the city of Huntsville tried to raise the park to make more room for graves, and in turn removed the slides and the swings and other jungle gym equipment. But they had such strong public outcry that instead the city replaced the playground equipment and put nicer, newer, modern equipment in the playground. So that's just the first urban legend that we want to talk about. And, you know, I think that a lot of hauntings and urban legends that we talk about, maybe that we see in the media, in movies and things like that, usually have something to do or revolve around children. And so I think that this right here is just kind of a classic example of that American child horror kind of thing. The next one I want to talk about is the Green Man or Charlie No Face. This is an interesting story because this is an urban legend that is based off of a real man. So the real man was Raymond Theodore Robinson, who was born October 29th, 1910. He died June 11th, 1985. He had been severely disfigured as a child in some form of electrical accident. And it basically disfigured him. And he obviously was severely disfigured to the point where many people thought he did not have a face. And the way the story goes, at least for his real life, was that he couldn't go out into public because he would kind of create a panic, or he feared he would create a panic. So at night, he would go for long walks and, get out, get some air, things like that. And his nighttime walks became the thing of legend. Local tourists now drive down the road where they say that the legend of the Green Man or Charlie No Face was supposed to have walked. Back when he was still alive, a lot of tourists would actually drive along the road in hopes of running into him and meeting him. He became kind of a local celebrity in western Pennsylvania. Now, the stories of Raymond Robinson became the Green Man and Charlie No Face because, just like any and all stories, they were passed down from generation to generation. We're talking about 1910 to 1985. I mean, that's a decent span of time where people could have met him, could have seen him walking down the street. But just like any other figure in history or anything like that, the stories grow taller down the line as they go. This is one of the arguments that many people have when we talk about religion and mythology, is that, yes, maybe these events did occur, and maybe these people were real, but they have been stretched and stretched and stretched into a point of where it's almost unbelievable to some people. The prime example I give you of this is David and Goliath in terms of religion. Many people feel that while the story of David and Goliath may be 100% true, and that it was most likely two soldiers who fought each other in war, the idea of Goliath being this literal giant that we get from reading the Bible may not necessarily be the case. It was more likely that David was simply a man of small and slim stature, whereas Goliath was maybe someone who was rather tall and well-built and stocky. So this is kind of one of those examples of how a real person became something that, many people maybe don't believe. And to this day, a lot of people who hear the story are surprised to find out that he's a real person. The way that those stories go is that the Green Man, as a boy, had climbed up an electrical pole to look inside a bird's nest when he was electrocuted. And he fell off the pole then and hit the ground. And due to the severeness of his injuries, he lost his eyes, his nose, his mouth, an ear, and an arm. The way that story goes is that he then went on to grow up and grow older, but hide himself in an abandoned house. And that he got the name Green Man because his skin was said to have turned green due to the electrical shock that he suffered in the stories. What we do know now about the actual Green Man, about Mr. Robinson is that, yes, he did lose his nose. He did lose a large majority of his mouth. And at least from the pictures of him that I have seen online, which you will see going through the slideshow as this video goes on, it would appear to me that he did lose his eyesight, as it would appear that he really does not have any eyes. Granted, I have not seen a ton of pictures, but the ones that I have seen, it would appear that he has no eyes. As for the ear, there are a couple pictures that I've seen where it appears that he has both ears. And then there's a couple pictures I've seen where the head is turned just right, where I can't tell if he has one or not. But I would simply say that this was a man who, due to severe injury, unfortunately lost his eyesight, lost much facial tissue such as his lips and in his nose. And the last urban legend I want to talk about comes from my home state of Indiana. Indiana, we are a state full of hauntings, okay? As a state, we have many, many, many stories about hauntings and exorcisms and spirits in the woods and spirits in the cornfields, and there's so many stories. And they are comparable, I guess, to other states because all states have their own ghost stories and things like that. You know, you have Massachusetts, who has stories about different historical monuments and buildings, people from history such as Giles Corey, who was a Salem witch trials victim. You have states such as Alabama, where there's multiple instances of quote-unquote child hauntings. Another one that we have here in Indiana is there is apparently these train tracks where you go and you can park your car over the tracks and your car will start moving by itself. And if you put baby powder on the back of your car, it said that if you get out of the car, there will be small children's handprints, and that the spirits of those children literally push your car off of the tracks because they were in a car that got stuck on the tracks and hit by a train. And so now they protect people from parking over the train tracks. But the story I'm going to tell you for Indiana is about the 100-Step Cemetery. This is a new story for me. I did not actually know about it until I was doing the research to make this video. But the 100-Step Cemetery is located in Brazil, Indiana. One of the things we have here in Indiana is a ton of cities named after different cities and countries. We have Paris, Indiana. We have Brazil, Indiana. Actually, one time, I think when my family and I were traveling through, and I don't know this for sure if we were in the state of Indiana at the time, but I'm pretty sure there's a Santa, Indiana. I may be incorrect. It could be Santa, Illinois, but we have some odd names in this state. So anyway, the story of the 100-Step Cemetery in Brazil, Indiana is an interesting one. There is no official address, technically, for the 100-Step Cemetery because some think that it doesn't actually lie within the town of Brazil, that it lies inside of a couple adjacent towns. So they kind of dispute what the official address is because each town lays claim to it. It's not necessarily clear when the stories about the cemetery began, but we know that the cemetery has headstones dating back to 1860. So it's very possible that the stories could have started around then. but we know that at least the spirits that they claim to still walk there could be as old as 1860. Now, the legend goes for this cemetery that if someone finds themselves there at midnight, or goes there at midnight, which I must add is illegal and against the law because the cemetery is closed at that period of time. But if they are there and they decide that at midnight they wish to climb the steps, they would have to climb up all 100 steps and count to 100 as they went up each step. If they got to the top and counted 100, it's said that the ghost of the original undertaker and groundskeeper for the cemetery will appear and show the person a vision of their death and tell them when it is to happen. On the way back down, the visitor is then supposed to count the steps again. If they count the same amount of steps when they get to the bottom, then the vision was false. If they count less than 100, or more than 100, I guess is possible also. If they count less than 100, then it is either disputed once again that the vision was correct and will come true, or that the undertaker will reappear and kill you on the spot. People who have visited the cemetery in the past apparently have tried to outsmart the spirits. And in order to outsmart them, they have tried to avoid going down the 100 steps altogether. And apparently people who have tried this have reported that they have either been knocked down, shoved to the ground, pushed by some kind of unseen force. So those are just 3 examples of some urban legends that we have in some of the 50 states. There are so many. I mean, I really dug through lists upon lists of urban legends and cryptids and things like that to find these 3 stories. And there were tons that I considered doing, but I felt that these were not necessarily 3 that were more appropriate for YouTube, but these were 3 that were not as severe as what some of the other stories were. So yeah, those are some of the urban legends of the United States. There's plenty more out there if you want to hear more about them. Tell me in the comments, what are some urban legends in your state? What are some urban legends in your city? I'm really curious to know because I know, at least in the state of Indiana, we have so many, and it seems like every city has at least 1 or 2. So I'd really be interested in hearing the stories that you guys grew up with or that you've lived around. I know that one of the stories that I specifically have lived around here in South Bend, Indiana, is that there is a building that we have restaurants here in Indiana called Hacienda. It's kind of like a Tex-Mex restaurant. Everybody just goes there for, the free chips and salsa. But the original Hacienda apparently is in a building that is haunted by the original owner. And I want to say that one is located in Mishawaka, Indiana, which is pretty much South Bend's next door neighbor. One side of my street is South Bend, and if you go to the other end, I think it's Mishawaka. So it's really interesting that we have, kind of one of those statewide famous ghost stories, right up the street from me. So yeah, let me know in the comments what stories you guys have and grew up with and what your cryptids and things are. Everybody, please have a safe Halloween. Parents, make sure you're checking your kids' candy. Too many crazy people out there these days are toying with it and doing things they shouldn't, and that's not right. Kids, listen to your parents. Have a safe Halloween. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. Make sure to like and follow, and we will see you next time.